A lot of people get confused when trying to understand what swing is. And it's understandable because there are a lot of variances on what swing is. A lot of gradients, I should say. It's not a situation where it's just on and off. The way I like to display it, that I find helps in clarify some of the confusion, is to lay out some paper like this. So these white lines here, the tape I have on the desk here, are signifying like the grid, right? If we have the piano roll up, or if we're dealing in a DAW with a piano roll and seeing just the blocks of time, right? And if we have regular time, we only have 2 beats that we're working with here. Straight time, I should say. The idea is that all of the notes, we have a beat 1, and we have the 8th note here, and then 2, and this would continue on. If we had 4 beats, right now we have 2 beats. So right now the down beat and the up beat, the end of the beat, they're evenly spaced apart from each other. Now, what makes something swing is if we push the end, the upbeat, out a little more, right? Now, depending on how far out we push it and how close it gets to the next downbeat is how hard of a swing it is. So we could have something that is completely straight, where everything is very equally spaced. All the notes, the 8th notes, are equally spaced between each other. But then as we start swinging it, we see that these 8th notes, they're going to get closer to where the downbeat is of the next beat, right? And like a hard swing would be really where they're very, very close together, right? And so we actually have a pretty big gap in between the big 8th notes, and they can actually start to sound, did I say big 8th notes? Well, they're not big. I mean, I guess it depends on how large you draw them on the paper, but I would say the spaced 8th notes, right? There's a wider distance. Now, when there's this wide of a distance, they almost has like a 16th note feel to it. There's a big gap there. 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, right? The original swing groove is really going to be based on triplets. So if we had 3 8th note, like an 8th note triplet here, right? So 3 8th notes combined within one beat. It's the first and last 8th notes of that 8th note triplet. 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4. So we're basically moving these 2 8th notes a distance apart that it ends up being the first and the third notes of a triplet, right? And then if we push it further, eventually this note gets far enough that it becomes being we have the first note and like the 4th note of 4 16th notes in a row, 1 E and So it can actually end up being 1 and 1 E and right? So it gets really spaced far apart. So this is what makes it different. Now, even if we're talking about triplets or the difference between 16th notes, it's not just saying, okay, well, it's just the first and third notes of an 8th note triplet, or it's the first and 4th notes of 4 16th notes in a row. There's a lot of gradients in between there, and depending on the genre, the era of music, and these can be more varied in between. There's a lot more colors, and you'll find this even within like the blues. There happens to be a lot of different shuffles, say, even in the blues, and this is the case with jazz too. There's a lot of different players that have different, I would say, grids or I would say distances that they like to move these 8th notes, right? And we can swing with 16th notes too and 8th notes. Generally when we swing, it has to do with these subdivisions of 8th and 16th notes. Not to say it can't be even higher subdivisions, but we're often not thinking about swinging the quarter notes because the quarter notes are what stay stable, right? So you notice that even though I was moving these 8th notes around, or the ands, right, that I'm not moving around the quarter notes. They're staying anchored. And that is something that's going to be different when I make a video where I'm talking about feels and playing ahead and behind the beat. That's the swing is a feel, but typically with the swing feel, as is maybe a little bit of an oversimplification, but the idea is that our downbeats, right, on the beats, they stay stable. They're pillars, right? They're stationary, and then these move. So It's a hard thing to get used to playing. I think one of the best things to do at first is to, you have to figure out your extremes, right? So playing something perfectly straight, and then of course moving your distances out so that almost you feel like pretty far out, like with those the dotted eighth and 16th note vibe I was mentioning about, which was like the first and fourth notes if you think about one beat and 4/16 notes in a row, right? So I'm actually going to write that down for you quick so you can see it here. So let's say I'm going to get another piece of paper and roll it right out. So here are two basic versions of it. So one would be, imagine we have a triplet, right? 3, right? And imagine we just don't play the middle one, right? And we're just going to draw this out for 2 beats, because we've been working only with 2 beats. So imagine we cut out that middle one. This is a version of a swing feel. 1, a 2, a 1, a 2, a 1, a 2, a 1, a 2. This is what traditionally the swing feel is based on. But, and by the way, that also has to do with African rhythms, right? These feels come from Africa, and in a lot of African music, there's subdivisions of triplets. Now, we could also think of having these 4/16 notes that I mentioned, right? And we're just cutting out the middle 2, which looks like this if you notate it, right? That's our 16th note. So it's 1 and a, right? 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 versus 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a... They sound very different than each other, and of course this would be like the most extreme swing, and often I would say people don't always go this far, but there's a lot of useful territory in between those two areas that you can use in your playing. And this is why it's good to play along with a lot of recordings. And there's some players that have some very specific types of swing to them, and Stevie Wonder is one of them that has a very unique feel and swing to the way that he makes music, and this is a little different than the way that Charlie Parker swung, or that Muddy Waters swung, right? So it's a matter of like playing along with those records and really just trying to absorb as much of the feel as you can to even just sense like where they're moving these eighth notes around, right? How far apart they're doing it, how tight or how loose does it sound, right? I know sometimes even in some country shuffles, sometimes it feels pretty straight, but it's just enough off. It's not even as far as moving to that eighth note triplet that I was talking about. It's even much more subtle than that it's moved over, but it's not completely straight. And this is the interesting thing as you start studying different forms of rock music and country music, is that sometimes the subtleties, and if you can even see how much I'm moving this, it's really subtle where I'm actually moving this. Like I'm just going to draw a line here on this tape, right? So imagine that, and I'm going to draw a line on the paper here. So right now we could see that these are matched up, right? And so if I'm just moving it over ever so much, right, that's enough to create a fluctuation in the feel. And I wouldn't be doing it on the downbeat, by the way. I'm just doing this because I have the tape here and you could visualize it. But I'm talking about doing this on the eighth note, right? But even just moving it that far creates an adjustment in the placement of the 2 eighth notes apart from each other, and that immediately starts creating a type of swing feel. You know, eventually you'll get the powers to be able to be super subtle with that and go from playing from super straight to wide out super swung. And that's something I like to do as an exercise sometimes as I'm playing, as I'll play a groove very straight or even just straight eighth notes, and I slowly just try to start moving them apart from each other so they start swinging harder and harder and harder and harder until finally it's like the widest swing that I can get to and the most extreme swing. And then I just slowly, bar by bar, I don't try to do it all within one measure. I try to do it like within a few bars. I'll keep reining it in and getting it back into the point that it's the feel is perfectly evenly spaced again to as straight of a feel as it can be. And this is not just important to drummers, but it's super important to guitar players and bassists and pianists, singers, right? Because there's so much that is based on this principle, right? I mean, all music is, and if you have a good handle over the swing, this is what's going to make it feel so much better when you're playing live and when you lock with other musicians. This is the lock. If everybody's kind of on the same page of how far they're displacing these eighth notes, you're gonna really have quite an awesome sound with everybody being unified together. So stay tuned for the next video, which is going to be about playing the pocket, I should say. It's going to be a lot more about pocket, and it's going to involve moving all the notes, and we're going to get deeper into that, but stay tuned. This is Anatomy of Tone. If you're liking what you're seeing, hit the subscribe button and check out my other videos, and also you can find me at anatomyoftone.com.